Evening all, how are we all doing? Welcome back to the stream. It's been a whole week, I think, since the last one. We've been busy in London at a convention, which has been very, very cool. Yeah, you all managed to get here before me. I'm never on time, it's a thing. Yes, I think Claire probably meant GMT rather than UTC. It is in fact 8 PM in the UK. But yes, we've been at a gaming festival in London. It was great, met some really cool people. AJ popped along, it was nice to see AJ again in person. He gave us a few little gifts, which was lovely. And yeah, it was really nice to see people experiencing the game for the first time, and also really educational as well. And one of the things that I want to look at tonight is better onboarding for people that have never seen the game before. Because one of the things that was immediately apparent is that people would sit down in front of the game, pick it up and go, now what? What am I doing? There's no obvious direction that players should go in, and it would be nice to make that a little bit more directed. I think what we'll probably even do is next time we do a convention, we'll probably have a convention build specifically that has more specific onboarding for players, so it's more led, more like a tutorial. So on that note, I was actually working on the tutorial. So this is the beginnings. Actually, no, you can't see it. Let me just press the button. This is the beginnings of the command tutorial. So this is in some ways going to replace some of the things we had in the scanning and nav tutorial. So this will be the introduction to the bridge and what the different stations are for. And then the scanning tutorial will literally just be the sensors console, and we'll do the helm as a separate one entirely. So there'll be 4 tutorials when this demo update goes out. So this should help with the onboarding, but the other thing I want to do is look at the overall game startup sequence and the kind of steps that players need to go through for creating their character, creating their ship, defining their crew, and just going through the whole experience from the beginning. Let me turn the music down a bit here a sec. So yeah, so what we're going to look at tonight is step by step how we want players to begin the game. Like, what is that beginning the game experience going to look like? And we already know at a high level what we're doing, but it would be nice to nail down the specifics of that. So fundamentally, we want players to, when they start a game, if they don't already have a predefined character, we want to invite the player to create that character, so create their first persona for the game, and then select which ship they're going to serve on. And then once the ship's been created, then you create that crew, or selected rather, then you create the crew for that vessel, for that mission, and then that defines that save game. And then obviously you then begin the mission, and it will do the whole arriving in the shuttle bay, going to the arrivals desk, getting your boarding card, going to your quarters, claiming your crew quarters, and then we'll have it say, when you're ready to begin your shift, exit your crew quarters, or at least flag it on the UI that you're ready to begin your shift, and then you start getting tasks to do aboard the vessel. So we really want that kind of onboarding to be as realistic as possible. But we don't have any of that set up kind of in the main menu structure yet, so it'll be good to start kind of adding the groundwork for that, in addition to the new tutorials. So the other part of that is we also need to start doing the link up between the game and the website. So not only for securing access to backer rewards and things, but also making profiles for ships that are stored via unique IDs. So I've already got that working to some extent. Where are we? So I've created a new account subsystem whereby we can log in to the website using a token, and the website and the game are now linked. We don't have a username and password box in the settings yet, but that's something I might add that tonight, actually. Get that added. But basically, that will allow you to have a Starship Simulator account on the website, which is linked to the game. So all of your exploits in your registered vessels can be shared on the website via a little profile that just says, how far you've traveled, how many systems you've explored, and all that kind of stuff. Maybe a bit of role play for a description of your vessel. Just a way of kind of bringing the community together. And if we add like a fleet section on the website, then we can do some little like leaderboards and things like which registered vessel has traveled the furthest from Earth. What are the top 10 vessels in terms of how much surveying they've done. So we can start adding things like that just to kind of bring the community together a little bit, so it's not quite so much an insular experience. Yeah, kind of. I mean, I've done a bunch of it already, so it shouldn't be that much additional work. Exactly, CSI. Yeah, no, it's using the REST API, so it's not storing anything in plain text. It's all tokenized. Yes, I mean the idea I had was to do registered organizations. So we have UNSF as a prefix for ship names. So we could do a registration for prefixes for an organization, and then we can have like a player assigned admin for that organization, so that any player added to that organization or any vessel added to that organization can see the other vessels in that organization, which is tracked by the backend database. So that is something we could do. I'll have a look at how to manage that. But we'd have to hand the admin of that over to the individual players, because obviously we don't want to be involved in administrating any of that ourselves. But the website needs to be the backbone for the community building for the game. So yes, we can start tracking things like which registered vessel explored a certain star system first. We can definitely add that. But none of this will be available in the game unless you create an account and log in. So we're going to make it a purely optional thing. So none of the online connected part of the game is going to be forced on players. It's going to be purely optional. If you're not interested, then don't make an account. Simple as that. Yeah, for the most part. Some of it is required for the Kickstarter goals. So things like backer patches for uniforms, access to the in-game Admiral Cluck plush, and things like that. Things that we want to give to players within the game. Those things need some kind of validation on an account basis, so that we can actually flag, who owns what. And also things like expansion tokens. So one of the things that we spoke about a couple of years back is people who have backed the game on certain levels get a certain number of expansions for free. Now we were just going to do that in chronological order. So however many expansions you re-release, you get those for free. But we had some people say, well, what if I don't want the middle one and I only want the first and the third? So we'll just we'll create expansion tokens essentially for an account, and if we've released, say, 5 expansions and you've got 2 tokens, then you can use those tokens on any of those 5 expansions. So you're not necessarily forced to have only the first 2. It's no additional work really to do that, so I see no reason not to do it. But yeah, so the whole tying your account to the game, that whole infrastructure is needed to provide those backer rewards. So we're doing the heavy lifting already for that. So tracking ship progress is nothing, in terms of additional content. Hey Melissa, good to see you. Right, so on our main menu, let's just have a look at what we're doing now and what needs to change. Another funny thing, actually, with the convention is we had, well, myself and Claire had this kind of debate over how obvious it was that you have to press spacebar to exit a chair. And I said, well, of course everyone's going to press spacebar to get up. I mean, surely it's obvious that press spacebar to jump, to get up, to get out of something. It's kind of a common thing in games. You press jump to get out of stuff. And then like 3 people in a row immediately couldn't get out the chair because they didn't know to press spacebar to get out, to jump. And yeah, so that completely proved me wrong. So we'll probably add get out of chair to the radial menu, just so there's no ambiguity with that. Yeah, we don't want to add a separate button for getting up because there's only a limited number of buttons on a controller, so we need multi-function buttons. So we have obviously F as our action key. So pressing F on a chair brings up the radial menu, of which sit down is an option. So pressing F to bring up the radial menu to get up again, we can definitely do that. But the confusion is that there's now a default quick action for objects, which is the left click. So if you walk up to a chair and left click, then the default action is just to sit in an empty chair. And we don't want to take that away because it makes it nice and quick to get around and sit in chairs and things. So left click to sit, spacebar to get out, or if we add get up to the radial menu, then you can just press F to both sit down and get up via the radial menu, which just removes any ambiguity there. I'm sure over time people will just get used to the fact you press spacebar to get up, but yeah, we don't want to create an extra button for that. Yeah, it must just be me. For me, it seemed like a no-brainer. Just press jump to get up, but yeah, I think I must have been the only one. As was proven on the day by lots of people getting stuck in chairs. Right, so I need to make sure I make these visible again, because I got rid of them for the convention build. This bit of debug text at the top here, by the way, it's coming straight from the website. So that's the the login system working, which is good to see. And it does that via that token. So this hasn't actually sent a username and password. It's just done it by token. Right. So yeah. So these ones are there and should be launchable now. Right, so continue mission needs to essentially bring up a list of available missions that are currently ongoing, rather than dumping you straight into the game. And then start new mission. We don't need that pop-up once we have multiple save slots available to us. And then we need to do the check here to see whether or not a character has been customized already. So I guess we also need a characters link on here as well. So maybe we'll go ahead and add that one. Thank you, Anasi, yes. That is the kind of thing I would forget to do. Okay. So I guess we'll add characters there. So just duplicate that one. And I think what we'll do is we'll have it say create character if there aren't any, and then just rename that to characters once there is one saved already. But we can do a validation check on that. So continue game, new game, stick that in there, pop a spacer in. Okay. I'll probably have to either squidge these together a little bit or make some more room on the menu, because we will start to get run out of space, because I believe this one is probably collapsed right now. Oops. Starting to go down off the bottom of the screen, so we'll move all that up a bit and jig it round. Not a bad shout, Delta. Okay, so let's just do a check on this. So we need to make a new save game for saved characters, and also another one for our actual running games. So rather than having just a single save, we need to make that an array of saves instead. So there's multiple games on there. Or we can just do that and just add a numerical identifier for each save and have them as different saves. Although I think for the characters at least, we'll store them all in an array and have just a single save file on disk. Oh, a wild Claire has arrived. Yes, Anasi, when we actually move over to MetaHuman, then yeah, everything will need changing and updating to support that. But anyway, so yeah, so that is true. Then we want to load save game from slot. Well, I'll sort this out in a minute. Just want to make sure we get the menu thing working first. So if we do have a save game and we've loaded it, and there are more than 0 characters, and we'll just have that say characters. Otherwise it will say create character. So we'll enforce this when starting a new game as well. So if you don't have a character created, it will direct you to create one. Obviously you need to be somebody in order to serve aboard the vessel, so that's kind of the first thing that it will get you to do. And actually, whilst we're discussing all of this anyway, this is going to shape kind of the development timeline after this current build. So once this build goes out to the public, obviously we are doing everything for early access, but in terms of the things we're focusing on, I want to start with that initial login and work from there. So I want to make sure that the initial entry into the game gets polished first before we start working on deeper game systems. So that means things like the character creator, the crew roster, those things will be done ahead of a lot of the task-based stuff in like engineering and sickbay and that sort of thing, because we want to get that entry into the game solid. After that, probably we're going to have to get the sublight stuff done, because me and Claire need to sit down and really go through this and make sure that we're doing things in the right order, because as much as we need to do everything, doing everything in the correct order is going to make life a bit easier. So to get the onboarding done, get the player in the game smoothly, and then from there, obviously the next step once you've been onboarded is to begin the role-based gameplay. So you've selected your position on the vessel, you know what department you're in, and now you're going to be expecting some tasks to be given to you. So that's where we break out into the 8 individual departments and start looking at what those departments need in order, in terms to give the player some stuff to do. So we just need to make sure we go through it step by step and don't put the cart before the horse sort of thing. Make sure we do things in the right order. Right, so for now we will just leave that as a simple yes. And I think for the character creator, obviously once you're in game, it's going to be a bit different because you'll be like within your crew quarters and doing things from there. But before you actually get into the game, then we're going to have to create an environment where characters can be created and customized and all that. So we're going to need probably like a mock-up crew quarters that we can use as a streaming level that we can just bring in order to put the character somewhere. But that's probably a good opportunity as well to actually flesh out one of the crew quarters, so that we're again sort of killing two birds rather than having to do that job twice. So if we do one of the crew quarters, get it reasonably polished, and then we can use that same environment for the character creator just to create a background for creating the character in. And then we can start adding that to our list of saved characters that we'll have here. There's a few big jobs involved with this, especially when it comes to the crew roster as well, because the crew roster is going to require not just the positions, but also like unique IDs for each actual role aboard the vessel, and that's obviously different per vessel as well. So each ship that we make needs to have its own unique crew roster with very specifically flagged roles or positions aboard that ship, so that each NPC or player is assigned a very specific position aboard the ship that has jobs associated with it. So we also need to do that. Which means when it comes to this single player save, or the multiplayer save as well, we need to make sure that we store all that information as part of the save game. And what I'm probably going to do is unify the single and multiplayer saves into just a single global save system, because right now there's nothing fundamentally different about the single or multiplayer saves. It's just they are separate save files on disk. So there's nothing stopping us taking one of the single player saves and using that as the base for a multiplayer game. So everything that has been achieved in that single player game will just be there in multiplayer, and then it will enable us to open a single player game up to multiplayer, so you can bring friends into your game, and then just go back to single player again afterwards. So there's no real distinction between single and multiplayer, other than the fact that you can just open it up for people to join, on a whim. That'll sort of make that cleaner. I won't touch any of that now though, because the directive I had from Claire before she popped off this evening was don't break anything. Like, we're so close to putting the demo build out, like, don't do anything that's going to break something. Nothing that you can't just turn off. So I need to make sure that we stick to those rules. Otherwise Claire will get mad at me. Yep. Yeah, so I guess more like Minecraft, whereby you could be just playing in single player, hit F9 to bring up the host controls. Is it F9 or F8? I think it's F9. Can't remember now. A long time since I pressed it. But yeah, bring up the host controls and then just literally open that game up for multiplayer, and then that game just appears on the server browser for people to join. And then if you don't want multiplayer anymore, you just press F9 again and just shut down the server. So you can continue playing, it will just no longer be advertised on the server browser. So it just means that whilst you're playing, you can open your game up for friends to join without even leaving the game. You can just start and stop the server arbitrarily whilst you're playing. And I think that's a much nicer way of getting people into the game, rather than having to go through the whole process of specifically serving a multiplayer game. And we'll leave that there anyway. So if you want to go through and do it that route, you can. But I also want it to be possible to be able to start a game from the game, just to be able to bring people in. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that one, Firstus, because we were working on the system creator in another stream, and as you can see, here it is working. So you can mess about and create different types of star. I'm not sure whether that's updating now, but I probably broke it at some point. But yeah, so we started building our star system creator here. And for some reason, it will just never load the streaming level properly in a package game. And I haven't gone back to it to check it out. But yes, this will be a thing at some point, both for backers and non-backers, so that you can create star systems and save them to disk. And then for backers, you'll have a submit button, which again takes us all the way back to what we were mentioning in the beginning, which is where the website account is so important, because all this stuff that we promised backers in Kickstarter requires some kind of an account system in order to process and serve all this content to players. So the way it's going to work for the star systems is you'll be able to, so both backers and non-backers will be able to just create as many star systems as they want locally within their game client, and then all just be saved to disk. And when you start a game, it will insert those star systems into your game locally. For backers, you'll have an additional button, which will be a publish button. And when you click that, it will put your star system into a queue on our website, where we can go through and moderate it, and make sure it's not called Titty World or something like that. Just make sure that it's fitting for the game environment. And then once we've accepted that as a valid system, it then goes into the game for everybody. So all players then get a copy of that system in their game. So just basically, non-backers, they're only local. For backers, they go into the game for everybody. That's the distinction between the two. But obviously we need all the infrastructure on the back end in order to support that functionality, which is some of the stuff I've been working on. So the link between the game and the website is done, so that's all working. And the token-based login and everything, that's all working. The REST API is working. So that's the link done. Now we just need to work on the data structure and make sure that we're sending and receiving the right stuff. But yeah, that's coming along quite quickly, which is good. Yes, well, I'm sure moderation of a lot of this stuff is going to be interesting. But yeah, we'll have a queue basically on the website where everything that gets submitted falls into a queue, and then we just work through that queue, just approving things as needed. And the same will be for editing as well. So once a star system has been created, we don't want that to just be static and set in stone. So you will be able to edit it and make changes over time. So if you've got, say, a story or some kind of role play scenario that's taking place within that system, you will be able to make updates to that system and change the story and what's going on live within the game. But every change that gets made will need to go through the approval process, because we don't want people submitting what looks like a perfectly normal system, and then go and edit it later and make it, NSFW everywhere. Yeah, I don't think Steam Workshop support will be needed for that. I mean, maybe. I won't say never, but yeah, maybe. Because it would be nice if you could create star systems, stick them on Steam and have people be able to just download those. Because the in-game star system creator is essentially just going to be a large array of struct values. So there's no reason why we can't output that from Steam. Although I don't know what format that would take on Steam's side. I've never used the Workshop backend before, so I don't know what it looks like. Yes, Melissa, you can do that from the Steam overlay. Oh, that's good then. Yeah, so as long as we can create some kind of package that can come from the Workshop, and a folder locally that it can read from, then yeah, that should be possible. We just need to make sure that the system creator can output something that can be uploaded. Right. Okay, so we've got that there. And then what was the other thing we wanted to do? So that's going to be for our characters, and then yeah, we'll get rid of this pop-up because that won't be needed. So we need to do a check before this comes up. That just says something on the lines of, by the way, you don't have a character yet, you need to create one before you can start a mission, and that will just funnel players through to the character creator. Assuming there is a character, I guess at this point, we will select the character profile we want to use before selecting a ship. So select the character, then select the ship you want to serve on, then you can begin the mission. I suppose a question for you guys is, when you continue a mission, would you prefer to have the ability to change which character you're using on that particular save game? So obviously when you start a new mission, you're selecting which character you're using, but if you want to come back to that save game later, do you want the ability to play that same save with multiple different characters depending on your mood? Like, you might have an engineer character, you might have a medical character, and depending on what you're feeling like, you want to insert that character into that mission, depending on how you're feeling or what you fancy doing. Sure, okay. Yeah, I mean, instinctually, I kind of feel that would be the better way of doing it. And I suppose even being able to hot swap characters whilst you're in game as well. Yeah, so if we've got the ability to, I guess go to your crew quarters, and then swap out to a different character. Okay, sounds good. Yeah, that'd be an interesting dynamic, Jason. Yeah. Yeah, I suppose the question is do we even, I suppose, for the save, when loading the save, We just need a reference to the last used character. So if you were to continue mission, it will just continue with whatever the last character was that you were using, to save an additional button click of having to select one each time. And then if once you're in game you think, actually I want to be someone else, then we'll have something on the escape menu maybe where you can swap characters. I think that's probably the cleanest way of doing it. Yeah, so starting in your crew quarters is definitely where we're going with it. It's just right now we don't have any, so that's why we're not. So when you first start the game, you'll be in the shuttle bay. So you'll be boarding the ship via a shuttle, and the game will start with you exiting the shuttle. A bit like how Skyrim starts. Like you're in a cart, you've got that little bit of initial dialogue while you're in the cart, and then you get out of the cart and now you're in the game. We'll do something similar but with a shuttle, with a shuttle bay. So you arrive in the shuttle bay, get out of the shuttle, go through the initial bit of role play where you're getting your boarding card and all that stuff. But from that point on, you'll be starting in your crew quarters. So once you've been assigned your crew quarters, that's always where you'll begin for that save game until you start a different save game. Exactly, Max, yeah. Yeah, so on here, when you select the ship and go to launch mission, the next thing that needs to come up is like the ship configuration, where you give it its name, its registry, and also sort out the crew members, because at this point is also where it will link up to the website and register the vessel. So we'll have a flag on here for whether or not you are registering this as a vessel that's actually like multiplayer compatible, essentially, a vessel that's shared outside of the game, or whether it's a local ship only. Because one of the things we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make the combination of prefix and registry number globally unique. So, to use the famous example NCC 1701, there could only ever be one of those within the game universe in terms of what gets stored on the website, because the prefix and the registry number are what creates the slug for the URL. So you would go to like /fleet and then put the slug in, and that's like how you would direct people to your card. That's basically your info card, your stats for that ship. So they have to be globally unique. But if you're creating that ship local only, then obviously we don't want to enforce any restrictions. You can call it whatever you want. But yeah, so there is that to think about. Yes, for saved. So for publicly viewable ones that are on the website, yes, we'll have to obviously limit like IP infringing things, but locally there'll be no limitation. You can call it literally whatever you want to call it. But yeah, if it's something that's going to be saved and appearing on the website, there will have to be some restrictions. I don't see the need to restrict NCC specifically as a prefix, but we'd certainly have to block like famous ship registries. But again, not locally, only for the website. But yeah, so we'll do that after this point. In fact, that's probably a good thing to have a look at tonight is take this, give us the ability to preset some of those values, so that when you then actually eventually start the game, those values are already registered or already stored as part of the ship customization. So it's values that are already there. So if you then press F3 in game, you should already see those values set. Yeah, we don't want to restrict player creativity in any way. Obviously, when it comes to IP infringement, then we have to be careful with certain things. But that aside, we don't want to curtail any creativity. So we'll probably, on the website, we'll probably just blacklist some registry and prefix combinations. But yeah, that aside, it's just, and the other thing that's worth bearing in mind is because these prefix and registry combinations are going to be globally unique, they are also going to be on a first come, first serve basis. So what we'll do is we will make the community aware when we're going to do the big purge prior to release. So right now, obviously, we're in pre-alpha. We'll then move into alpha. So what we'll do is when we go to early access, at that point, we'll do the purge. And then we'll basically just get rid of all of the pre-registered ships to give the community at large the opportunity to go in there and register their vessels, because we're going to have to do galaxy resets and all sorts of other bits and pieces up until then. And when it comes to tracking things like how far you've been, what you've scanned, and all that sort of stuff, right now we don't have half the game mechanics in the game. So things like refueling, things shooting at you. So it wouldn't be fair to have the game as it stands now, where none of those dangers are there, be included in the stats and statistics that gets tracked. So once we add all the dangers to the galaxy, then we'll reset the data, essentially, so everyone starts with a level playing field, for the sake of keeping it fair. Yeah. So this is an optional thing. So when you create a save game, you are essentially registering a vessel, and you will have a tick box where you choose to make that a public vessel or a private vessel just for your game. If you haven't logged in and connected to the website, then that won't even be relevant anyway, because if you choose not to bother making an account and not to bother putting the account details in the client, then none of that is relevant. So it's purely an optional thing. This is a way for us to bring the community together and have people be able to share their progress with each other by way of like information cards. So you'll be able to bring up a profile page for your vessel that lists all the things you've done, things you've achieved, how many systems you've surveyed, how far you've flown, all things like that, so that you can just send someone a link to your profile and then they can see your ship and a little description of your ship and all that sort of stuff. It's just a way of just enhancing the community around the game. We can't make an MMO. We don't have the resources or infrastructure to make an MMO, but we can be MMO light by providing some of that kind of functionality. Just community stuff, basically. But that aside, it does open the door to a lot of other interesting bits and pieces as well. But obviously, infrastructure-wise, we need to handle the registering of ships and that sort of thing. Yes, Dave. Yeah, so for backers, the only way we can reliably authenticate whether or not someone has access to certain backer rewards is via a username and password. So we'll have that on the website. You'll be able to sign up either from the game or from the website. You'll be able to sign up from either location. And then we will then, on the back end, apply the backer rewards that are relevant for what backer rank you are. So that's basically a job for Claire. She doesn't know it yet, but she's going to be doing a lot of work assigning rewards to people's accounts. So obviously we've got 5,500 Kickstarter backers, and for those backers to have access to a lot of the stuff they've backed, we need them to create accounts on the website, and then Claire needs to go in and validate email addresses against things that they've paid for and make sure that people have all the stuff that they should have. And then all those people need to do is simply add the username and password to the game settings, because we'll add a settings page for that. So you just enter your username and password, and then the game says, all right, I know who you are, here's all your stuff. And that is entirely separate from registering a ship for like the community ship profile sharing stuff. Those are two separate things. And the latter thing with sharing your vessel's progress is purely optional. There will be, we'll have it so you're opted out by default. So you have to specifically opt into it if you want it. Yeah, I don't think I'd trust that to AI, to be fair. What we'll probably do is we will generate the list of email addresses that we have registered, because Kickstarter does output CSV files with all the data in them, so we do have that data resource available to us. We could either pre-create all the accounts and then send emails out to say, here, go and pick yourself a password. But it's probably easier if we just communicate the need to create an account, and then people can just go on and create their account, and then one by one, Claire will go through and validate people and add stuff. She did it before with other backer rewards, and it only took about a week, so hopefully it won't take long to get through. Plus, I can automate some of it via spreadsheets. Ah, right, yeah. Yeah, everyone spare a thought for Claire, because she's going to have a lot of work to do. But again, this is the only surefire way, really, of being able to validate people's backer rewards, because we can't do it through Steam. There has to be some way of identifying who you are, and a username and password is just it's the easiest, most obvious way of doing it. So speaking of which, I suppose we need an account page on here as well, just to be able to set that up. Actually, that's not a bad shout. Let's do that. I'm flitting a lot with this tonight, because it's one of those things where there's like 10 different things to do, and I'm not sure which one to start with, and I don't want to break anything, so I'm being very careful not to break Claire's rules. I don't want to get shouted at. It's true. Claire's record keeping is legendary. She's she maintains some really tight records, and it amazes me how people will message her and she just knows exactly who they are. And I haven't got a clue, but yeah, I guess she's staring at the data so often, so it just sort of sinks in. Right, so yeah, we don't really want to add it to any of these, so it's going to have to be a separate thing. And we'll just call that account. I always forget how these grid panels work. So we've got, so that's row, so that's column 1, that's going to be 2, yes, all that needs to go up. So if we make that 1, then that would be 2, that would be 3, that would be 4, 5, and 6. And then we just need to make this bigger to fit. Thanks, Melissa. No, it's all good. There is a plan. That's why we go through these periods of reflection and kind of sit back and take stock of everything and kind of work out, what we're doing and why. Because sometimes it's good to be able to just sit back and review whether or not you're on the right track. I think we've got to round that off to a nice, easy to remember number. Right, so the widget switcher for the tabbed interface is also going to need changing. So each one of these is going to go up by 1. Yeah, the having large text on the UIs, we will try. It's a difficult one because a lot of it is scaled specifically for the UI itself. So when you change the size of the text, it kind of messes the UIs up. But I'll see whether or not we can do that. Can't remember why I'm doing this. Why are we forcing these to be visible? I'm sure I'll find out in a minute. Okay, and on here we're going to have to add a page to this. Spell that right. Yeah, it's driving Claire nuts at the moment, trying to get this patch done. She's like, every day she's like, have you done it yet? It's like, no, we're getting there, we're getting there. Okay, that should have added all the stuff there. Right, let's just duplicate duplicate the preferences one for the account one, and then we can set up the boxes and everything that we need. So we'll call that one account. Move that into the right spot. Right, so that's now index 0, and we've already just updated all the indexes, so it should go between them. Okay. I'll just rename all of these. So none of that should be needed. That can stay. I mean, he's not wrong. So as part of the token when you log in, by default it will take your computer name as the description for the token. But if we put in a box for this, you can give it any name you want. So when you look at your account details on the website, it will show you, which device is actually logged in. In fact, it's probably easier to call it device name, wouldn't it? Okay, and then we need text boxes. Yes, Delta. So I'm really keen to fly towards the ship in a shuttle and be able to be looking out of the window of the shuttle as you approach and go in through the shuttle bay. So you're really feeling like you're boarding the vessel from outside of the vessel. So you're not just spawning in the shuttle bay, you're actually boarding the ship for the first time. I think that'll be a lot more immersive. Right, so column 0000, that's all going to be column 1. And then those two are going to be row 2. Those two are going to be row 3. Don't think we can specifically size the box itself, so we'll stick a size box around it. Just want to get that to line up over there. So that one, that's a specific size, and I want this one to be the full width. So I guess in some ways it doesn't need to be in a size box. Nope, that didn't help. Cue my traditional statement of, I hate working with UIs. So why isn't the border being the full width? Just do it manually for now. Okay, and then add some padding on these. Make sure that the tabs actually work a minute. Hey Seeker, good to see you. Okay, so that button's not clickable, so we need to sort that out. But these are all going to the right pages. So it's just that one we need to fix. Remembered why I'm doing this now. So, yes, so the button you're on needs to be not hit testable so that you can't press the button that you're on. And of course, then all the other ones do need to be. Which means we need to add the buttons that are not currently being clicked to the list of the ones that are active. So these two need adding to all of these. So we're going to have to make a bit of room for this. Doesn't help that I've squished it all together. But that's why it wasn't clickable, because it wasn't on the list. Okay, so which one are we missing off of here? It's got display, graphics, audio, controls and accessibility. And that needs changing to that. Those are the two that we're missing. Okay. Getting there. So the text color isn't updating, but it's clickable now. So they're all working. So the highlight's working. Oh, I see, and the text isn't updating on that one either. Okay. I can see why that one's not updating. That makes sense. Let's rename that so we don't get confused. We are missing something somewhere. So that isn't changing color like these ones are. So it's definitely on there. How very odd. There shouldn't be anything different about these two text boxes. odd. Well, I'll come back to that. Okay. Okay, so we're going to have to build the like the create account functionality into this as well, so that we don't like necessarily have to do it from the website. So going to the website needs to be optional. So yeah, so if we can create it from here, then we can just link up to the website in the background to create the account. It should be simple enough. But then we also need to grab some buttons. Might have to stick these on the canvas panel, because I need to specifically position them. Although I suppose we could stick it on there. Let's try it and see. So if we pop it down below, so we want row 5. Yeah, and of course it's because there's nothing in between, it just appends it to the bottom. So anything above 4 is ignored. But we'll see if we can add a spacer or something in there. Okay, so if we're already logged in, then we don't need to worry about this. I'll obviously clean that up as well after, make it prettier. Oh, I see what I did there. I just used padding. It's probably the least optimal way of doing it, but it works for now. Okay, so we make that our account connect. Make that account details. We'll just go with that for now, actually. So we can use that just to verify that we are actually logged in and we're getting data from the website. Let me just set something up a minute. Okay. So if we grab that, yeah, and then we'll connect it to this. So we don't really need that for now. We need our session change. Then we can change this to our test account. Super secure password. Right, and then we need our text box there. Okay, so if the token is successfully validated, then we should just display that. Otherwise we'll just, actually we won't do the login. Yeah, no, that won't be that. And we'll do is authenticated. Okay, so if we're not logged in, then we'll do the login with our account details. I suppose actually we won't bother setting that manually. Let's set it from here. So it won't actually store the username and password in the clients. It stores a token instead. So once you've entered the details, they don't actually get saved. Right, that should handle our login. Yeah, don't need to do anything else with that. But this actually needs to go up here. So if we are logged in, then we'll display the details. If we're not, then we need to make sure that we rename this text. Now we are logged in. We just have that say connected and disable the button. Although saying that, I'll leave it like that for now for testing, but that would prevent you from using multiple accounts. So I guess we don't want to block multiple account usage. Okay, let's see whether it works. So username was test account, password was test account 1234. Won't bother with the device name. So if you leave that blank, it will just use your local computer name. It says, oh, right. So I'm already connected with a token on my test account. So if I kill that a minute. So it's going to need to refresh this in order for that to change. I have to auto refresh it, just make sure that doesn't happen. All right, so now that will allow us to connect. So test account 1234, connect. Huzzah! So it's now created a token and we are connected. So that's the like connecting to the server side of things sorted, which is good. To be honest, that went easier than I expected. Yeah, when it comes to things like disconnecting, changing usernames, passwords, all that sort of thing, we'll add that all onto here. So anything you can do on the website account-wise, we'll make sure you can also do it from within the game client, so that you don't have to go to the website unless you absolutely want to. So yeah, so now I'm trying to get my head around the process of doing this. No, Melissa, you don't need. So the only reason you would ever want to log into this is if you were a backer and you want your backer rewards, or if you want to share the exploits of your ship with the community via the website. Those are the only two reasons you'd ever want to log in. If you're not a backer and you don't want to share your progress anywhere, then you don't need to log in to the game. This is purely for providing external services. Multiplayer will just work with the Steam subsystem. Exactly, hats and socials. But the important thing is that it is connecting and it is working, and we've got access to the database. the next task from here is start to build out the actual data pipeline, so we know what data we're storing, where we're getting it from, and how that's being imported and exported in and out of the game. Off the top of my head, I think we definitely want to track how far from Earth you've been, so that so we can make a little bit of a leaderboard on that, so we can see, you know, which ships have traveled the furthest. And I think and then got back home again needs to be kind of like the save criteria. So if you leave Earth and then return back to Earth, the maximum distance you got before returning back to Earth will be the stat that's stored, just so that, you know, you can't fly off into nowhere and never come back. And things like number of systems that have been fully surveyed, so we can definitely track that. There's lots of things, I suppose, really. You know, successful first contacts, yeah, a number of enemies destroyed. That's kind of not really within the spirit of the game, but we can track that sort of thing. I'm sure we'll come up with a list of things that the community want to see. But the idea is on the website you'll have essentially like little mini league tables for all these different stats and statistics, so you can see, you know, optionally, if you want to take part, you can see where you stand versus other ships that have been registered as vessels within the game. Ultimately, what we're creating is a fleet registry, and taking part in the fleet registry is the optional thing. And I think we're just going to have to make it really, really obvious how optional it is, so that people don't panic. I know everyone panics when online stuff is suddenly added. In fact, I think I might type something on there just to underline how optional it is. Let's move that down there. Yeah, wormholes, they are quite high up on the to-do list, so we should have them practically the same time that we do supply engines. For the simple reason is that we already have working wormholes. All the tech needed for wormholes is there and done. We just need the ability to collide with them, and for that we need the sublight engines and sublight collisions. By creating an account on Starship Simulator.co.uk, you can access your backup vessels. Progress with the community. Where has text wrapping gone? There it is. This is entirely optional and is in no way required to play the game. Okay, hopefully that will make it clearer. Yeah, so what I'll do off of the stream is I'll start adding some of the backer reward stuff to this so that we can start collating who has what. And at the very least, we can start listing on here what things should be unlocked. And of course, one of the first things that we can add to that is that the Caravella for people that have already got the lifetime content pass. We can open that up now, just as a way of connecting to it to see whether it works. Not that you can do anything on it right now. Yeah, and the plushie. Yeah, I was talking about that earlier. So with this, having the game connected to the website means that we can start adding MMO-like features. So creating an organization for players is definitely something we could do. And then we can have a player organization register a prefix code. So UNSF is obviously like the in-universe prefix code for the UN fleet. So you could perhaps register a 3 to 5 letter prefix for an organization, and we would have to have a member of that organization, one or more members I suppose, flagged as being administrators so that they can add other people to that organization. And then if you are in an organization and we are tracking the location of those ships in the database, then the game can quite easily read that data and show organization ships in the galaxy wherever they may be. You wouldn't be able to interact with them in any way, so you can't like board them or bump into them or anything, but they'd show on the sensors as being somewhere, and there'd be a proxy for that vessel in the game world. It wouldn't be flying around and moving, it would just be sat there, and every time the database is read, it would be moved somewhere else. So it's not like proper all the ships in the same game kind of multiplayer. But even if it's updating, say, once every 10 seconds, we can take things like what is the current speed that it's moving and what is the current vector that it's heading in. And then for the next 10 seconds, that's the speed it's moving and that's the direction it's heading in. And then every 10 seconds it would update to be pointing in a different direction at a different speed. So it would be pretty shoddy looking in a way, but it is a way of having multiple ships share the same game world in a really rough and ready kind of way. But from a pure kind of roleplay perspective, at least we can group players together and have them see where each other are on the sensors, if nothing else. Yeah, exactly that, AJ. Basically like flight radar, or the boat equivalent. Yeah, it wouldn't be as sophisticated as if they were actually in the game with you. It would really be very much just like a flight radar system where you can see where they are in the galaxy. But if you're part of a player group and you have multiple vessels out there as part of your organization, just being able to see them on the sensors would be better than nothing. I think that's probably the best way I'd describe it, is better than nothing. But yeah, don't get your hopes up that it's going to be like full on lots of ships flying around together, because it wouldn't be that. No, Dongo, you'd have to physically join their game. So again, it would literally just be like flight radar. Nothing more sophisticated than that. Hopefully, Doughty, yeah. I need to think about the data overhead with the breadcrumb trail, because if we're creating a breadcrumb trail entry, say every time the ship stops or disengages from FTL, that's probably the preferable way of doing it, because you're not constantly updating an array of vectors, because it would get very big very, very quickly. But if you're only doing it when the ship stops, then you're creating points around the galaxy where you have dropped out of warp and done something. That's probably the better way of doing that. Yes, Anassi. But in terms of having multiple ships actually boardable together in the same game, that's going to require a game that is started specifically with those ships in it already. Or ships that are small enough that can be spawned as part of the game. So the Admiral's yacht is kind of like that. I don't know whether it's going to be small enough to be able to support that. I mean, we've already built the system for having multiple ships in the game. So the shuttle test that we did is kind of like the proof of concept that you can have multiple ships in the game that are boardable independently and have their own perspective on the universe. So, tick, we've done that. The issue that we will have with multiple large vessels is those interiors need to be loaded for all of them. So, you couldn't have 2 Magellans, because you're talking about an absolute nightmarish amount of VRAM that you would need to store all those textures and everything. And just RAM in general for all the stuff within those ships. So yeah, there would be a tremendous amount of resource requirement to have 2 ships that big at once with their interiors. But small ships, we could probably have 2 or 3 of those together, all flying independently. But that's one of them way off in the future things that we need to look at. Welcome back, Sawbones. And yeah, and as Dave pointed out, the kind of capture the ship PvP mode we want to add at some point, which, you know, for clarity, will be one of the very, very last things we do. That will require 2 vessels at once in the game. But again, they're not going to be Magellan-sized. They'll probably be more sort of Caravella-sized-ish. Yeah, see, server meshing would be nice, and so you can kind of do it with beacons. So Unreal does have a way of linking multiplayer games together. So yeah, there could be a point in the future where you don't actually need to render multiple ships in the game, because each ship would be its own multiplayer session, and all the other ships see the other sessions. It's just the exterior proxy for that vessel. And if you then board that vessel, you are being transferred to that other server, so your session gets moved over. So if we were using beacons, we could do that. But again, that's a when everything else is done kind of thing. No, probably not anything the size of a Magellan, because, you know, obviously we do want derelict ships and stations in the game, and the way we'll be approaching that is just by procedurally generating them. So we won't need to generate the entire vessel all at once like we do with the Magellan. We'll just be adding rooms and things procedurally as you explore those interiors, so they'll work slightly differently. But no, something like a derelict Magellan, with the size of the interior it has and the amount of stuff that's on the inside of it, I doubt very much that we could just dynamically spawn something that big into the game. Because if you think about it, when you load into the game the first time and you see how long it takes to load in the Magellan, that's how long it would take to spawn in a Magellan, because it has to go through the same process of loading all the levels. But not only that, we'd have to offset those levels somewhere hidden so that you could actually get to it. But yeah, it would be a big ask to be able to dynamically spawn something like that. Like the Caravella, for example, is much, much smaller. So again, it's about the size of one of the Magellan's engine pods. So something that small with a much smaller footprint in terms of RAM usage and everything, we could probably get away with spawning those dynamically. But we'd have to see. Right, where were we? Right, yeah, so we've tested the account system. That's all connecting to the website fine. So we just need to do the data side of that. Okay, and then the other bits and pieces were more starting the game side of things, which would be on this widget, not that one. Right, let's collapse these a minute, just to get them out of the way. Yeah, and let's also collapse that one as well. Because we don't need the character creator or the system creator yet. But we do want to make sure that we've got the placeholders there for them for when we are ready. Let's make sure they're not actually there. Yep, that's good. Yeah, so they'll be enabled when they're actually working. Yeah, so we can't really do the character select yet until we've got the character creator done. But I'm wondering whether we can do maybe the ship config bit of it. So So how do we want to do this? So select it, and yeah, I guess we'll change launch mission to configure vessel. And that can bring up the vessel configuration screen where you can enter the details for it. I suppose there we also need to add the tick box for making it available online as well. And it would need to do a check against the unique prefix and vessel ID code to make sure it's not a duplicate. Alright, let's see if we can crowbar that in a minute. I suppose we've also got the crew configuration as well, the crew roster. So that'll be another step in the process, but we'll just probably make a placeholder for that for now. Okay, so I just need to make sure we've got the right ship ID that we can reference. Okay, and then on this one. So we want a picture of the ship, and then some boxes for configuring a said ship. So we don't want that, or that. Okay. Guess we'll just have a text field for the ship class with a picture of it underneath. Yeah, space toilets will be part of the engineering gameplay. How big did I make this? Not big enough. Might have to retake that image and make the original bigger so that we can make it bigger on the UI. suppose actually things like these can go on this screen rather than the previous screen. So we'll keep them on here. And then we'll need the launch mission button moved onto here as well. Being attacked by a moth. So that can be ship select. And that can be continue to be launch mission. Okay, so we don't need text box there. We don't need the text box there. We don't need any of that actually. That can all go. Yes, Melissa. There is already the emote options on the radial menu, although there are no actual emotes configured. But yes, there'll be emotes and dance moves, and we'll make them, things like the ability to play rock, paper, scissors, and the ability to point at stuff and wave, and the usual sorts of things. There will definitely be a salute, yes. Yeah, the menu doesn't do anything yet. They're just there as a placeholder. I think I'll wrap all of these in a grid panel. Makes that easier. Right, and then we need suppose the same things that we have in the game. Hang on, let's just go and have a look a minute, because I can't remember whether or not whether we're using an organization prefix that is stored separately. In sickbay, there will be a main diagnostic machine that you basically use, and that will tell you essentially what is wrong with the person, and then you'll be able to select what treatment is most appropriate, and that's the bit that's going to be the gameplay, is deciding which treatment is the right treatment. And if you choose wrong, then you make them worse. If you choose right, you make them better. It's going to be quite straightforward, really. Any major operations or anything, that there'll be an operations table, like the auto med thing from the Passengers movie. So we're not making Surgeon Simulator. The character will lay down on a machine, and the machine will do the work. You'll just be there selecting the right treatment from the menu, and that's where the pressure is on the player to select the right thing for the machine to do, as opposed to physically, perform the operation. Yeah, like a giant bioscanner. Just going to close the door a minute whilst that's loading, because it's getting quite cold. Oh yeah, I forgot I had this set up for the tutorial. Okay. Yeah, so we're storing an organization prefix separately. And we're going to have to split up the registry number into a registry prefix and a registry number. So these will be stored separately. And then when it gets displayed in game, it will be with a space. So the way that we're going to lock down what can or cannot be typed here is the prefix is going to be alphabet only in capitals, and then the registry number will be able to contain letters or numbers, so you can do something like that along with a dash, but it's only going to be letters, numbers and dashes. You won't be able to do things like that, just to keep it sanitized. So yeah, for now, we only need the registry number all at once, but we will split that into two different things for sure. So we want org prefix. You can have it as a name, Anassi, but not as a registration number. So organization name, so that would be 4 and 5. Where'd that go? Claire likes to lurk in the background. Yeah, to be honest, Danger Mouse, that's not a terrible idea. I mean, we do want to add like scenarios at some point where it puts the ship in a certain situation. And again, when it comes to things like conventions, again, one of the things that was really apparent at the convention is that the game really needs a quick start mode that just puts people straight into doing something, as opposed to saying, right, here's a sandbox, go play in it. So yeah, things like scenarios is definitely something that's needed. Yes, the doorbell will make a noise. We just have to find a nice sounding doorbell noise. For some reason, every time I picture it, I can always hear the one from Babylon 5. Let's add this. So I think we're going to need a page specifically set up for this, because when we click through stuff, yeah, so we're going to need to set our current page, which means we need to add it to enum. So we might as well add a few here actually. Okay, so we've got ship select, ship configuration, and then we've also got crew roster. Character select. It's going to be a few of these. Save game select. Character creator. I think that might be it actually. Okay, so ship select, ship configuration, and then crew roster. That's kind of the order that goes through in. And then we've also got character select. Which kind of fits in there. I suppose we'll stick that above it. And I guess with continue game, I suppose we don't even have a continue game actually, because it takes you straight into the game. So save game select would be what continue game goes to. Okay, just kind of future proofing that a little bit. Compile that to reload the enum. Yeah, that actually was on the to-do list, Delta. I think we've kind of forgotten it over the past month or so. But yes, one of the things we did want to do is add the door code to the host controls. So we have a host override, a command override, and an engineering override. So we've got different codes that can be used for different purposes. The host one would be like a global override that only the host can use, whereas the others would be assigned to crew roles. Oh, potentially, yeah. Yeah, the way we'll do it with continue game is when you click continue game, it will just ask you to select which game you want to continue. Otherwise, we need to put load game as a separate option on the menu, and that is making the main menu even more cluttered. It's already growing quite large. And security, yes. Fair point. Right, so launch mission should now be configure vessel. And then these need to be replaced. I suppose what I could do... no, I don't want to do that. I want to move it. Yeah, so both of these need to move down to there. And then we need to get rid of those ones, because we're actually referencing these in the code, so it's better to use those ones. So then that, and that don't need to be there. Yeah, so we'll need to adjust this so we don't just have buttons floating in the middle of nowhere. So this is going to need a bit of a UI overhaul. Yeah, ultimately we want there to be dozens and dozens of different ships. So we'll probably have an arrow each side to kind of cycle through them all on a carousel. And then we'll pretty that up and have the buttons kind of assigned to the carousel. But for now, we'll leave it like that. So configure vessel should now take us through to a different page. So we're no longer going to do that. Instead, we're going to have to make let's make a couple of macros for the other one as well. Right, so we want to fade that out. And then we want to fade in the ship configure page, and then we'll set our current page to ship configuration. then we're going to have to duplicate everything we've done there for ship config. So we need to find a reference to that and then replace that. This animation stuff was something that we had when this was a 2D menu, which was screen space. And I think enough people have mentioned now that they're not a fan of the blurriness you get with it being 3D, that we will create a 2D version of it again, which is separate from the VR one. So in order to have the main menu usable in VR, obviously it has to be a physical 3D object in the world that the VR controllers can touch. But in order to do that, obviously it then has to be a 3D object for everybody. And the reason you get the weird blurriness, at least in the editor, when you change between menus, is because this is a it's actually it's not transparent, it's masked, but it doesn't play well with temporal anti-aliasing, which is where you get the blur. If we go back to making it an actual screen space 2D object, then that nullifies all of that and gets rid of all of the blurriness and the issues, which means that the VR one can be entirely separate from the first person one, which means the first person one stays crisp and non-blurry, and then the VR one just has to deal with the fact that it's a 3D object. But you don't notice it in VR anyway, because it's moving with your head, so you don't have the same issues you have when you're staring at it on a flat screen. Okay, that worked. But yeah, we'll separate the two of them again so that we get the best of both worlds on each. Right. And then need to do the back functionality in that as well. Although I think I'll add that probably over here. Let's just fix these a minute. So column 1 at row 4 and row 5. Yeah, so when we launch the mission, it needs to get the values from these and then update the ship config accordingly. So we just need to make sure that that gets actually saved when we do it. Okay, before we do that though, let's just make sure that the menu works. So new mission, select the ship, configure vessel. Great. There's no need to check whether this needs to be enabled or not, because if you don't actually select anything here, it will just use the defaults anyway, so that's not a big issue. That's not going to work yet, so we'll hook that one up. And of course the other thing we need to do is have the text and the image update depending on the vessel ID, but until we add the Caravella in as a playable ship, I won't bother with that for now. So we need to rename that button and that one. Okay, so back to ship select. It's going to do the opposite of this. So we want to fade that one out, fade that one in, set that to ship select. Okay. Yeah, so that handles the back button. Then we also need the actual launch game again, which is now this one. So we need to fade out config ship, fade in the loading screen, and yeah, set that up. Yeah, and then we need to grab grab the options as they're configured, and we need to set some values on those. Yeah, I guess probably on game instance. So we need to get that, and that. So we need to get the values of these. That one. Yeah, then for each of these, we need to update the corresponding values in the ship customization. Now the issue we're going to have is that it's loading that immediately upon the game starting. So I'm wondering whether or not we do a cheeky little save right from here. Although, oh yeah, we can, because we're starting a new game. Obviously, we're generating a new save file, which means we're setting up the entries in the save file already. So we can actually just inject these values directly into the save file, so that when it comes to loading that file and applying the values for the ship configuration, we've already pre-populated them from the game start. Let's make sure that that works all the way through. So new mission, select your ship, configure vessel, enter details there, blah blah blah. Oh yeah, and then that needs to be hooked up. Back to ship select should work, and it remembers which one you had selected. Oh yeah, they won't let you select that one. Okay, so we just need to make sure that that button's not disabled. Okay, and launch. Yep, that loads the loading screen. Okay, so I might actually just add the crew roster placeholder page on there as well, just so that we've got them, just all the breadcrumb trails linked together. Yeah, the issue you're seeing there, Sirius, is usually because the object you're flying towards, the radius calculation hasn't gone right. So the one where this is most prevalent right now is with rogue planets. It's because it tries to calculate the radius of the star system, and then it sets that as your entry point. But if you're disengaging the FTL drive on the autopilot outside of the "I have successfully arrived" radius, then it's constantly trying to re-enable the FTL to get to that distance from the core of the system, but the autopilot keeps turning it off because it thinks, no, actually we're there already. So you've got this conflict between what the NPC's trying to do and the autopilot. So that it keeps kind of firing up the FTL, then immediately closing it down again. So I just need to make sure that those two radiuses are linked properly. Oh, I forgot how long it takes to load this in the editor. But actually, we don't need to load it because we just needed to prove that it was going to try and load at least, which it did. So, hurrah for that. Yeah, the computer will know who's what and who's where. Just trying to think through the order of doing this now. So from the main menu, you are starting a new game. We won't have the "Are you sure" bit because instead of that, we would have create save game as a page in its own right. And then after that, we'd have the character select. And then after the character select, we'd have the ship select. Then after the ship select, we'd have the ship config. And after the ship config, we'd then have the crew roster to set up. So there's a few steps that you need to go through to actually set up a game. Yeah, I think as long as all of it can be defaulted and you can just go click, 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 it should be fine. Just need to make sure that it can be quick when it needs to be. So we've got a crew roster. So let me set that one up. And then for now, we can just delete that. And then that one would be back to ship. Configuration. And that one would be launch mission, the actual launch mission, which means that one would be crew roster. Right, so these need to daisy chain into each other. And they can be skipped if necessary. Now, let's make this more obvious. So, start new game, character select. Okay, so back to menu, ship selection. So we need to make sure we have all these set up. So back to main menu. One is actually back to character select. That one is to ship configuration. Back to character select. And I'll unify all of this into like a stepped process, and we'll probably have like a ribbon across the top that just shows the individual steps, so that you can skip back and forth along the ribbon before launching the mission. So back to character select and to ship configuration. Both of these should already have their link it set up. And then that one is back to ship select and crew roster. To crew roster. Back to ship select. Okay. And then back to ship config and launch mission. Right, so that should be the several step process. Oh, we need to rename that too, don't we? Oh no, we don't. Right, so let's get all that lined up. So confirm new game needs to not fade that one, but it needs to fade in character select. So we need to make a couple of new macros. So fade up character select and crew roster. So menu crew roster. And character select. So that goes to character select. So from character select, we go to ship select, and we also need a back to main menu. Yeah, and then that one, that needs to be that one. So back to main menu is going to fade out that one and fade in that one. And then set our current page as main menu. Okay. Right, so the next one we go to is ship select. So we need to fade out character select. And then fade in ship select. This might appear long-winded, but this is how we know what page we're on for things like controller support. So that when we manage the controller inputs, we know exactly which page of the menu we're currently looking at. Okay, so 2 ship selects, and then it's 2 ship configuration. So that's that one. And then we need I think we're missing a back button here somewhere. So back to main menu, or forwards to ship selection, and then forwards to ship configuration. So we need a back. I need to put a note on these because I'm getting myself confused. So that's on the crew roster page. And that is on character select page. So we need to have 2 of these on each. So forwards to ship select would be from the character select. Okay, so there's that pairing. Yeah, so that is the ship select page. And back to ship select would be ship config page. And then to crew roster would also be ship config page. Okay, that's from the main menu. So what are we missing? So from the ship selection, we need a back to character select. Which is that one. That's the one we were missing. I'll add the controller buttons afterwards before we go live. Shan't worry about them for now. Right, so crew roster, that's our final launch. Okay, so character select, so that's that pair. So backwards and forwards. So then ship select. That's that pair backwards and forwards. So we're going to fade out ship select. And where are we going to? To character select. So to fade in that one. And set our current page accordingly. That pair. Okay, so this one goes to ship select. So we fade out ship config, fade in ship collect, correct? Yep, that, and then we fade out ship config again, because that's the page we're on. And then we fade in crew roster, which I don't think I've added yet. Okay, then from the crew roster page, we've got launch mission, and then we also need the back button. So let's move all these out of the way again. Crew roster, don't do that. It's not the right one. So fade out crew roster and then fade in ship config. Is that one. Right, that should be all the pages linking to one another and all the way back to the main menu. So let's just give that a quick try. And hopefully I didn't mess any of it up. So, new mission. Why is that all the way up there? So select character profile, which is coming soon. So we'll go straight through to ship selection. This bit is working. So we'll then go to configure our vessel. This bit is also working. So we'll go through to our crew roster. Crew roster is coming soon. So we'll just go ahead and launch mission. But let's just check we can go back again. So back to ship config, back to ship select, back to character select, and back to main menu. Yeah, so that's all working. Great. And I think the problem with that is we just need to move that down. So it's down 90 units. That's more like it. I would never. Okay, back to main menu. Okay, so ship selection, configure vessel, crew roster, launch mission. Okay, back to ship configuration, back to ship selection. Yeah, we'll want to unify these buttons, I think. This whole process definitely needs a progress ribbon across the top. It's kind of begging for it, really. Because the whole process of selecting your character, selecting your ship, configuring your crew roster is all part and parcel of the same process of configuring the mission before going to launch. Okay. All good. Yeah, so I suppose the only bit, well, I say that. Yeah, so we've got, so this Are You Sure box will be replaced by creating a save game. So like name the save game, pick a slot for it, that sort of thing. So that's what will be here. And then once you confirm the save game slot, then it will ask you to pick the character. And I guess if there are no saved characters at this point, then it will give you the option to create one. Although, that said, what I might do is when you click Start New Mission, rather than giving you the save game option, maybe we'll have a flag here, like you need to create at least one character before starting a mission, and that will take you to the character select then. Yeah, that's probably better, because then we're not going through the process of creating a save game and then having to make a character. We kind of need that already in place. Okay. Yeah, and I guess the other thing we need to add to this is that flag as to whether or not we make it a publicly viewable mission. Because what we're essentially doing here at this point, assuming that you are signed into the game and you're signed into the website, then the ship that you create and configure here is what goes onto the website. So this is you creating that profile on the website. I guess as part of that save game. So I suppose, yeah, so after we go through to the crew roster, yeah, when you click launch mission, I think what we'll do is we'll have it come up with a, like, you know, connecting to website, saving profile, blah, 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 blah. Have it say all of those things before launching the mission. And it will give you like the unique ship ID and all that stuff. And maybe give you, maybe pause at that point to give you the ability to, like, to write it down or something before finally launching the mission. And then just skip that. So if you haven't selected it as a public ship here, then when you go through to launch mission, it will just skip all of that and just launch the mission. So it's purely a local game. Although I suppose, just thinking, when it comes to creating the save game, I suppose we need to flag at that point whether that mission is being saved. I'm also wondering whether we do that bit first. because the other thing is... No, I was thinking, what if you wanted to create a mission on an existing ship? But then this is kind of that already, because yeah, if you're using an existing ship, I guess that's where you'd pick it from there anyway. And once that vessel's been created and it is part of the save file, you'll have the option to go back to Earth and relaunch missions on that same vessel anyway. So I guess what you're doing is you're creating that ship. I suppose we could kind of do with creating the ship first. I'm just thinking through the just the feel of how we're doing this. So as I told people all weekend at the convention, the ship is the hero of the story, not you as a character. You're just a small cog in the machine. You're just part of the crew. The ship itself is the hero. So really, creating the ship needs to be the first thing you do, and then create or pick your profile as part of the crew roster, I suppose. It makes more sense to kind of do it the other way. Do it that way rather than picking your crew profile first. Yeah, this is how my mind works, AJ. I tend to fling things at the page to see what sticks, and I look at it and I think, no, you know what, that was rubbish. What was I thinking? Because conceptually, we want to celebrate the ship and the mission that the ship is doing, more so than the individual characters aboard the ship, because the individual crew members are just crew members. It's the ship itself, the mission, that we want to be kind of fanfaring. So when we link this to the profile on the website, we need to say, it's not like, look at this character. It's like, look at this ship. Look what this ship is doing. Look how far this ship has explored. So we need things like all of the name and everything details for the ship, but also like captained by, and then the name of the captain, launched on so and so date. We really need to kind of go hard on celebrating that as much as possible. So starting a new mission needs to be an event. It needs to be like a big deal. So you get that fanfare, the ship is being launched, you get the confetti and the bottle of champagne smashed on the side of it and all that stuff. That's the big fanfare. So creating the profile on the website and having that immediately viewable on the website, that needs to be part of that fanfare. But yeah, I'm sure I'll change my mind a few more times whilst making it. But I'll leave it like this for now, because otherwise we've got to rejig the buttons. So yeah, that and that all works. Yes, Claire. So in the same way that we have a disclaimer on the account page, so if we just go back to that a minute. So yeah, so we've got the disclaimer here just to make sure people understand that this is not a requirement to play. This is a purely optional thing if you want to be a part of the wider community. If you don't want to be a part of the wider community, you don't have to be. So that's clear from here. The whole thing of sharing your vessel, sharing your mission on the website, I guess we won't even have that come up if you haven't already done this. So if you haven't put in your account details and you haven't connected it to the website, then that won't even happen. You'll not even know it's there. But if you have opted into this, I guess that's when it comes up. Yeah. But again, going back to what we were saying earlier, is logging in here to collect your backer rewards is a different thing to sharing your progress online. Yeah, exactly that first, as you've just pointed out. So yeah, there does need to be a separation between those two things. And I guess on the account page is probably the place to do it. Whilst we've got all this information here, we just need a couple of tick boxes for opt-in to like mission sharing online, or opt-in to community mission sharing. I'll find some wording for it that makes sense. But yeah, you're quite right that people need to see that it's purely optional, and they need to see that their data is not going to suddenly end up on some website somewhere, without them having agreed to that beforehand. But yeah, so we'll have more to show on this reasonably soon, I would think. Yeah, so the next job really is getting that data structure formalized, working out exactly which bits of the ship state we're going to extract and expose to the website as part of a profile card. And exactly what data we're going to start tracking. I do love the idea of having a global exploration tracker on the galaxy map. So we'll have an actual galaxy map on the website with some way of drawing lines on it to see who's been where and what's been explored. I suppose we could probably do that sector by sector. So for every 100 light year cube that a player stops in, we can just highlight that, which means all we actually need is our 100,000 by 1,000 by 1,000 pixel galaxy map, and then we'll simply color in those squares once we've flagged that a player has been in that sector. That's probably the easiest way, and then over time that will spread across the galaxy map. And we can also heat map that as well, so obviously the more players that enter certain sectors, the brighter that can be on the map. And we can do that top down and sideways on to give it the full 3D treatment. We could even, maybe using OpenGL or something, actually have a 3D galaxy map that shows all the sector cubes that have been explored. But that's a lot of pixels. Hang on. Volume of a sphere calculator. So sector-wise, our galaxy would be 500 sectors in radius, I think. Yeah, because times 100 would be 50,000. Yeah, so 500 sectors in radius, which is 5 times 10 to the power 8 in a sphere, which is a big old number. What's that? 5.2 trillion? Yeah, I think trillion. So what's that? 8 zeros? Hang on. Spreadsheet. Let's find a blank bit on my scratch pad. This is where I scribble stuff down. I'm trying to work stuff out. I scribble a lot of stuff down. So 5.24 times 10 to the power 8. Yeah, so that many sectors in a sphere would cover the whole galaxy and its galactic halo. That's not that many actually, it's 524 million. So yeah, so we would need 524 million data points that we can shade a particular color as players enter and exit those sectors. So if we were able to make a 3D sphere with 524 million pixels, as a voxelized sphere, then yes, we could track that fully in 3D, which would be kind of cool actually. But we'll see. It would have to be some kind of WebGL thing, I think. Yeah, we wouldn't be able to zoom into a sector to look at the individual stars because we don't know beforehand what stars would be in a sector, because we need the galaxy gen to generate those stars. But what we can do is simply tell whether a player has been in a sector and how many players have been within a sector. So we can use that data to draw a map. But yeah. Ben Ains, yes, a captain's log on the website, definitely. So the idea with the website is you'd create your profile, and then every vessel that you create with a unique registry number is listed under your account. So you could have as many ships as you want registered under your account, and each one of those has its own profile that you can share. But yeah, absolutely. I love the idea of being able to enter a captain's log for a particular vessel, and have that viewable on the website. I think that would be quite good. And given that it's just something that you would have to specifically share on your own, we wouldn't need to moderate that too heavily. We'd have some auto modding on it, but I think if it's a profile that you're having to generate and share with friends, then it's not something that's going to be seen by the general public. Therefore, need of moderation is perhaps less strict. So yeah, well, I think we'll call it there, because there's nothing I can really get stuck into at this point that's going to be less than 8 minutes. So yes, we shall carry on with this as we go. So what day is it? Sunday, isn't it? Yeah, so I will continue with the new tutorials, and hopefully I'll get them out on a test build relatively soon for everyone to try. Yeah, and then that aside, it's just back to bug fixing and polishing before we can get this demo build out to the public. Yeah, Claire is hopping up and down impatiently, waiting for me to get that done. So I shall go and put the kettle on, make a cup of tea, and get myself straight back into it. Yeah, and then hopefully Claire can stop shouting at me. All right, have a good one, everyone, and I shall see you on Wednesday for more fun and shenanigans. Have a great week, and bye for now.